Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm back with another video. It's June 22nd, 2026. It's a Monday afternoon here in Chiang Mai, and I'm back after about 6 weeks away from Chiang Mai. I did make a short video yesterday, but I want to talk with all of you about my travels. So I spent about a month in Russia. I spent a couple of days in Moscow, and then about a week in Volgograd, another roughly 2 weeks in Yalta and in Crimea, and then back for a few days in Moscow. Returned to Thailand, where I did a 5-day meditation retreat with some Thai people and a very fine Western-trained Portuguese Zen teacher named João Rodriguez. And now I'm back in Chiang Mai. So I just want to go through all the events that occurred, and I'll be doing that in subsequent videos and adding, photographs and videos and things like that. But the first thing I want to talk about is why I visited Russia in the first place here in 2026. And I'll go through some of the bullet points that I have noting this. So the first thing is that I just seem to have ancestral ties that bring me back. When I talk with people, I find that I get along well with Russian people. I often have really good conversations with them. And is it because they're just really cool people, or is it because I have I have some kind of Russian blood in me? I mean, all four of my grandparents came from the Russian Empire, either from Lithuania, which is now an independent country, but it was part of the Russian Empire. And I'm almost certain that my grandmother spoke Russian and wrote Russian. I had other Russian grandparents who came from what is now Belarus. And so I have some kind of affinity, you could say, with Russian people and Russian culture. So that's probably one of the reasons why I keep going back there. And I don't feel drawn to other, many other countries. I've never been to Mexico, for example, or South America. Lots of people love it, or Africa. For some reason, I keep going back to Russia. So I don't know. It's probably, as I say, there's some kind of ancestral tie there. The second reason is that we are in a state of very high tension with Russia, and there's a possibility of either conventional war or a nuclear war, even with Russia, which would be a world-ending event. And we certainly don't want that to happen. But in order to prevent that kind of thing, I think it's very important to have some mutual understanding. And what I see is that most Americans really don't understand Russia. And so I thought it would be a good idea for me to go to Russia and actually talk with Russian people and hear what they have to say. So that's the second reason. The third reason, which is related to it, is the fact that people in the West have a very skewed understanding of Russia's history, Russia's relationship with the United States, and I hope to dispel those views and get better relations and relations more in alignment, as they were in better times in the past, notably in the 1970s. Just as a kind of departure from this, Russia and the United States were not always, at each other's throats. In fact, as I'll mention a little bit later, I wrote a letter to the Russian authorities that was tucked in with my passport, pointing out that Russia has actually been a great friend of the United States in our history. And so it's very unfortunate that there's this kind of animosity, especially on the part of the people in the United States and the authorities especially, but a lot of misunderstanding towards Russians in Russia. While I was in Russia, by the way, there were a lot of times where you'd be listening to U.S. music. I was walking on the promenade in Yalta, which is a very nice kind of seafront walkway that you can go. And there was a cafe there, and they were playing blues, So American, it was like, some African, I think it was some African American, guitar player singing blues, and there was a kind of anti-capitalist twist to this song. I'll get to that in a later video, but I thought it was interesting. Well, that they're playing this kind of music, and Russians most Russians have a very positive feeling of the American people, and so it's really unfortunate that there's this kind of misunderstanding. That's the reason why I go to Russia. Another reason I go. Now, another reason I went is because, as many of you know, I've been practicing Zen meditation for a number of years, many years, and I wanted to get a sense of what's going on in Russia. Now, I would say, I think it was like 3 years ago or so, I found on social media, I found a Zen group in Moscow. I had actually visited them briefly in an earlier year, but I thought this would be really great to spend some time with them. So I contacted my friend there, and I said, if you can find somebody in Moscow who can host me, so I don't stay in just some impersonal hotel, but I actually get to hang out with a Russian person and save myself some money, in the meantime. And they may be interested in talking with an American as well. So so he found somebody. My friend Andre in Moscow found somebody, and so that's what I did. I stayed for a couple of days in Moscow with a very nice woman named Yulia, and then I went on towards Volgograd and other areas. But the point was that I wanted to see what's going on with Zen in Russia. I also wanted to visit some historical sites that are of interest. So that was another reason. An additional reason was that I do have American friends in Russia, and also, of course, I have some Russian friends. I wanted to visit them. As it turns out, I was only able to visit one American friend, Regis Tremblay, in Yalta. My friend Nicholas and Don in Moscow they work in Moscow, but they have regular jobs, and they didn't have time to meet me, unfortunately. I also generally wanted to see the state of spirituality in Russia, because I am here in Thailand, and I have a number of Russian friends here who are either involved in yoga or meditation or something of that nature. And I wondered, what is actually going on inside of Russia itself. Interestingly enough, yesterday, I do a little workshop in Zen practice here in Chiang Mai, and two people showed up for it yesterday. One is Chinese, another one is from Canada. And my Chinese friend Tiana and I were talking over lunch afterwards, and she invited her friend named Xin to join us. So Xin and I were talking, and she said she just came from Vietnam, and she said that the city that she stays in often when she's there is Da Nang, and she said there's yoga studios, and they're all Russians. What is it with all these Russians? And I have Russians who are they're in Phuket, which is one of the major tourist islands in Thailand, and many Russians are really interested in spirituality. So I wanted to see what's going on in Russia regarding that. So those are basically the issues that the reason why I wanted to go there. Now, the first thing that I did, though, was I thought, when I went there, I guess it was in, I think, 2025, I went on a trip, and when I got to the airport in Moscow, they detained me for a good hour, at least an hour, and they even had detained a Russian guy, and we were both coming from Thailand. And I wondered, what's going on? Why are they? What's the problem? But they detained me. So I thought, well, what I would do is write a little letter to them, to the authorities, so that if they did take me aside, I could say, this is the reason why I've come here, and I've got my website. You can check it out and decide whether I'm a bad person or not. So I'll read this letter that I wrote. It's called "Why I'm Visiting Russia," and I said, I'm an American, and during our revolution to be rid of the British king, we're still no kings, in America, we're still having these no kings. What is this thing? We haven't gotten over our fiction. Can't we get rid of these people finally? Just tell Britain, get rid of your king and, get a real democracy for a change, not to mention the US having a real democracy, which is questionable. But anyway, so the Tsar, the Russian Tsar, refused to send mercenaries to oppress us, and actually helped the U.S. Colonists with important supplies. During the U.S. Civil War, the British tried to divide my country, the United States, by supporting the slave states, and Russia sent ships to prevent the British from blockading us. And we were allies in World War II, which is the Russians called the Great Patriotic War, where they lost 27 million people, and at least a third of their country was absolutely decimated. And this is for Americans, war is something that kind of happens over there. It's not really a big deal. Yeah, some people come back. Yeah, they have some problems, but we can kind of brush them aside, give them a little medicine for PTSD, and it'll all be fine. But most people have no real contact with war, and whereas Russians have a really visceral, direct experience of what it's like to have your country totally devastated by an invader. So there's that aspect of it. But in any case, during World War II, President Roosevelt, and Joseph Stalin, the leader of Russia, cooperated with each other. And Roosevelt actually had a vision of eliminating the colonial system after World War II, and he was brushed aside, essentially, and Truman put in his place, in effect, to prevent that from happening. And that's one of the main reasons why we have problems now, is because FDR's vision was not able to be carried out. In any case, as I go on here, unfortunately, since World War II, the leaders of my country have all too often treated first the Soviet Union and now Russia as an adversary and even as an enemy. And in my opinion, it's unjust. It's misguided. It's based on bad information. There's no reason why we can't be friends with Russia. So I wanted to point that out to any possible immigration authorities at the airport. Now, I go on in my letter and I say, I feel differently. All four of my grandparents came from Lithuania or Belarus. They were part of the Russian Empire. The grandmother told me that Hitler killed most of her family, and the Soviet Union defeated the fascists and liberated the concentration camps. So I feel that I personally, as somebody whose family did suffer during World War II, owe Russia and the Soviet Union a debt of gratitude. As a child, I worried that someday the Nazis might come back, and in fact they have, especially in Ukraine, but in other countries. And this is all with the help and support of the United States, in fact. On the other hand, Russia is fighting the fascists in Ukraine, and it's shown itself to be a friend of countries under attack, such as Iran or Cuba, or in the countries of Africa, which have been victims of French colonialism. They basically nurtured terrorist groups to keep those countries under control. Eventually, those countries got rid of the French, and who did they ask to come in and help them out? They asked Russia. So for these reasons, I support Russia, and I came to celebrate Victory Day with friends in Volgograd, and I also wanted to visit friends in Moscow and Yalta. So I thank Russia for being on what I consider the right side of history. I'm not against the United States. What I want is the United States to fulfill its the true American dream of what Henry Wallace called the century of the common man, where oligarchs aren't making the decisions and the people have better health care, better education, better housing, all the things that a responsible society should spend its money on instead of on war. So that's why I think that Russia is standing in the way of these I'm not saying Russia's perfect, of course, no country is, but but generally speaking, I feel that they are trying to do the right thing, and they stood up for the people of eastern Ukraine, who were under severe attack for 8 years between 2014 and 2022, and they were going to be wiped out by a Ukrainian attack, which the United States had sponsored. They built up Ukraine during that 8-year period, including under Trump, who claims no responsibility for the war, even though he was financing and supporting the Ukrainian extremists with weapons. So I think that I'm on the side of truth and justice, and in this case, the United States has a serious problem, and I think Russia, on balance, is a better global citizen, you could say, than the leadership of the United States at this point. So that is basically the letter that I wrote, and I include my website, which you're watching this video on, that's the reason why I decided to visit Russia. So I'll just, in closing, I'll show that I hope you can support my website. You can maybe buy one of my what I call information billboard T-shirts, such as this one here. It says, "Be kind, try it today. Doesn't matter what religion you are. Kindness it goes a long way towards making human relations better. So please consider buying a T-shirt online, or or subscribing to my Substack channel, or to my buy me a coffee, and even to PayPal. You can send a donation to PayPal, because these trips are not cheap, and in fact, I'm living on a pension, so it's not like I'm rolling in dough here. So your support is appreciated. So thanks again for listening, and I will talk with you soon in the next video, detailing more of my trip to Russia.